Okay, so today is Alma Chapter 4, and there was some really good stuff in the supplemental that I want to talk about. So in this, there's been some fighting, and so peace returns to the land, and Alma decides that he's going to give the judgment seat over to to another man, and he's going to devote his full time to preaching. And so some people are being lifted up in the pride of their hearts for their clothes and their fine twined linen and things like that. And it gives an evidence about the fine twined linen. And it says, critics of the Book of Mormon cite references to the Nephites and Jaredites' silks and fine twined linens as proof that the book is flawed. It is true that cultural records for pre-Columbian America mention neither silk nor linen, and that European conquerors apparently did not find silkworms or flax when they arrived in the Americas. However, several fabrics have recently been identified in ancient Mesoamerica that could reasonably be termed silk and linen. So anyways, it's just saying that there are fabrics that could be termed as linen. In translating, linen could be the closest word to the original text. Something like that. So anyways, it says, and the wickedness of the church was a great stumbling block to those who did not belong to the church, and thus the church began to fail in its progress, and that's verse 10. And so what it's saying is that the wickedness of the people who were in the church was deterring non-members of the church from joining up, because they're doing the exact same stuff that I'm doing. Why would I join the church and be better or whatever, So, anyways, it says, there is great power in example. Example can bless or curse. Remember, we are always leading someone somewhere. So I really enjoy that, because it's kind of easy to forget that we are an example. Our children are watching us, our nieces and nephews are watching us, our coworkers, our friends. We are always leading someone somewhere. We're always an example, and we need to remember that. So then it goes into pride. And it says in so Alma's preaching, and it says that he can see no way to bring the people back except to bear down in pure testimony against them. And it says, the power of the Word of God is without limit or boundaries. As we speak, let us never doubt the power of the Word. When spoken by the Spirit, it has power to change souls. We should seek to bless others who are struggling by touching their hearts with the Spirit through the Word of God. And that's just, you're not going to convince anyone except for with your pure testimony. And, okay, so now we go into pride, and this is the part that I loved. It gives a lot of C.S. Lewis quotes in here, and bear with me because they're so good. Anyways, all right, so pride is characterized by what do I want out of life rather than what would God have me do with my life. It is self-will as opposed to God's will. It is fear of man over the fear of God. Humility responds to God's will, to the fear of his judgments, and to the needs of those around us. To the proud, the applause of the world rings in their ears. To the humble, the applause of heaven warms their hearts. Someone has said, pride gets no pleasure out of having something, only out of having more of it than the next man. And I wrote that one down in my scriptures. It's like, I don't know, it's just so good. Anyways, Then it goes into the C.S. Lewis stuff, which is so good. Okay, so I'll just get to it. So C.S. Lewis says, the moment you have a self at all, there is a possibility of putting yourself first, wanting to be the center, wanting to be God, in fact. That was the sin of Satan, and that was the sin he taught the human race. No words. Anyways, so it gives C.S. Lewis is writing a letter to his friend, and this is what he says. He says, I have found out ludicrous and terrible things about my own character. Sitting by, watching the rising thoughts to break their necks as they pop up, one learns to know the sort of thoughts that do come. And will you believe it, 1 out of every 3 is a thought of self-admiration. When everything else fails, having had its neck broken, comes the thought, what an admirable fellow I am to have broken their necks. I catch myself posturing before the mirror, so to speak, all day long. I pretend I am carefully thinking of what I will say to the next pupil, for his good, of course, and then suddenly realize I am really thinking of how frightfully clever I am going to be and how he will admire me. When you force yourself to stop it, you admire yourself for doing that. It's like fighting the Hydra. There seems to be no end to it. Depth under depth of self-love and self-admiration. Pride is the mother of all sins and the original sin of Lucifer. And I loved this bit because you never think of it that way before. You know, you're like those bad little thoughts pop up in your head and you're like, okay, change the subject. And you're like, oh, I'm so good. And so 1 out of every 3 thoughts is a self-admiration thought. And it's like, all right, let's check ourselves. Anyways, it goes on to say, Lewis alluded to the bidirectional nature of pride when he taught that Satan always delivers heresies in pairs. He always sends error into the world in pairs of opposites. And he always encourages us to spend a lot of time thinking which is the worst. And you see why, of course. He relies on your extra dislike of the one error to draw you gradually into the opposite one. Again, never thought of it that way before, but when you think about it, you're always faced with a choice, and he gives you those choices. He's like, there's this one or there's this one, and he relies on you to use your agency to choose which one is worse. And, you know, by focusing, oh, I hate this one so much, I'm not going to do that, blah, 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 that this one rises a little higher and you slip a little further towards the other one. I loved that a lot. And then there was one line that I loved so much, and it goes, from Lewis, of course. Lewis taught that if we think ourselves not guilty of pride, it means we are very conceited indeed. Ugh. I don't know how he does it, but he just has a way of putting things so clearly and simply that it's just like, it smacks you upside the head. I don't think I'm not guilty of pride. I know I have pride. I know I'm conceited. I have issues that I'm working through. But, you know, when you're just like, oh, that person is so prideful. Oh my goodness, he's so cocky. I can't stand him. Ugh, he's so ostentatious. I don't know. Anyways, I think that's all I had. I think that's all I had. Yeah, okay. So that's Alma Chapter 4. Alright, talk to you later.